the age of imperialism, Norway was under Danish and then Swedish control. Now, Denmark had set up colonies in the Caribbean, in India, and of course they had Greenland and Iceland, and Sweden tried to set up colonies in the Americas and Africa. But when Norway gained its independence in 1905, they were left with no overseas colonies and pretty much nowhere left to colonize. Now, in the late 19th century, there was the Norwegian East Africa Company, which had enterprises around Zanzibar. But this seems to be a purely capitalist venture. It doesn't seem that they were looking to annex any territory. And the same can be said for Norwegian traders out in the Solomon Islands, Mozambique and the likes. But in the 1920s, the Norwegians did begin to look to expand, and their expansionist policy was aimed squarely at defending their whaling industry. For instance, Svalbard in the far north. Now, this had been used as a whaling centre for centuries. For instance, one of the islands is called New Amsterdam because the Dutch used to use the islands for whaling back in the 17th century. But just after World War I, the Norwegians claimed the islands and were given them in 1925. Jan Mayen also had a similar history. It was used by the Dutch, the English and even the Austrians as a whaling base, but nobody had really claimed it, so the Norwegians claimed it and were given it in 1921. But they soon began to look far south for even more colonies. Now, it should be said that the Norwegians were the first people to get to the South Pole, despite Scott of the Antarctic's greater fame. And in 1929 and 1930, they successfully claimed Peter I Island and Bouvet Island off the coast of Antarctica. They had much larger plans for mainland Antarctica. Now, they claimed Queen Maud Land, which would have been over 2.7 million kilometers squared of land in Antarctica. And interestingly, during World War II, the Nazis also claimed land within Queen Maud Land called New Swabia. Now, the Norwegians were given some authority over this land, albeit very temporarily, in 1957. Now, there were other small claims here and there throughout the 20th century. For instance, back in 1904, the Norwegians were the first people to settle in South Georgia Island, set up a Lutheran church there, and even went on whaling hunts. But nothing came of this claim. However, they could very well have divided Greenland. A Norwegian man named Halvard Devold raised the Norwegian flag in a recently built whaling station called Migbukta, which was in eastern Greenland, a then pretty much all uninhabited region. However, Eric the Red's land, as it was going to be called, was not given to Norway after the International Court ruled against them. And finally, it seems the Norwegians' last attempt to expand came during World War II, when the collaborationist government were looking to expand into the Kola Peninsula in Finland, and also they had territorial ambitions in Russia. Well, they actually sought to take Arkhangelsk and the surrounding region in Russia because many believe that Bjarmeland, a region mentioned in Norse mythology, refers to this land. But there was also some talks on taking the Faroe Islands, Iceland, and potentially even launching a preemptive strike against the Swedes.